Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking on the ultimate real estate heavyweight match, renting versus buying. We are going to settle this once and for all by tracking the 20-year financial journeys of two completely identical individuals. Meet Brian the buyer and Rachel the renter. They're about to embark on two totally different paths, and let me tell you, the final math is going to reveal a truth that most people miss entirely.
All right, let's set the stage. To keep things absolutely fair, Brian and Rachel both earn exactly $90,000 a year, and they both have exactly $50,000 saved up in the bank. But on one ordinary Tuesday, Brian decides to buy a median-priced American house for $415,000. He signs about 40 different documents, cramps up his hand, and gets a shiny new key. Rachel, on the other hand, decides to rent the exact identical house right down the street. She signs a lease, gets a confirmation email, and immediately sets up an automatic transfer to drop her unused cash into a boring broad market index fund. Boom, two completely different paths.
Fast forward to day one, and the comparison seems incredibly obvious to everyone at Brian's housewarming party. Brian is standing there proudly comparing his $2,360 monthly mortgage payment to Rachel's $2,000 monthly rent. He is absolutely convinced he is building wealth and equity, while he assumes Rachel is literally just throwing her hard-earned money away into her landlord's pocket. Right? We've all heard that one.
Well, what Brian's well-meaning Uncle Dave conveniently forgot to mention is that a mortgage payment is just the minimum cost of owning a home. It completely ignores what we call the quiet killers. We're talking about unrecoverable costs. Think property taxes at roughly $350 a month, rising homeowners insurance at $200, private mortgage insurance at $150 because he didn't put 20% down, and maintenance. And let me tell you, a roof doesn't care about your budget. It definitely keeps its own calendar, bringing average maintenance costs to about 1 to 2% of the home's overall value every single year.
So when you actually tally up all those quiet killers, oof, the reality of Brian's budget looks vastly different. He isn't just spending $2,360 a month. He is actually shelling out closer to $3,400 a month just to keep that house running. Rachel, meanwhile, she pays her rent, a few bucks for renter's insurance, and brings her all-in cost to just $2,015.
And this right here, this creates a massive, totally hidden variable, a $1,400 monthly gap. Think about why this matters for our 20-year journey. Every single dollar of that $1,400 is pouring directly into Rachel's boring index fund to compound and grow. Meanwhile, Brian is up at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, practically yelling at a plumber about a broken pipe. Now, if you want to figure this out for your own life without just guessing, you can use something called the 5% rule. It is a brilliant little hack to calculate the true unrecoverable costs of a home. You just take the home price, multiply it by 5%, which roughly accounts for property tax, maintenance, and the cost of debt, and then divide that by 12 months. This gives you a really solid baseline number to directly compare against local monthly rent.
Let's actually apply that to Brian's $415,000 house. We find that his true unrecoverable cost, meaning the money that literally just vanishes to taxes, insurance, and interest, is $1,700 a month. You compare that to Rachel's $2,000 rent, and suddenly this entire debate looks incredibly close. It's essentially a coin flip on day one, which proves we absolutely have to look at the long-term math to see who actually wins.
So, let's watch how this fascinating timeline plays out as the years roll on. In the early years, Rachel takes this massive lead. But as time passes, they hit a really interesting break-even point right around year 6. And then, by the time they reach year 10, something amazing happens. They are perfectly tied on paper. But as you're going to see, they are living two completely different lives.
Let's backtrack to year 3 for a second to see how this builds up. Rachel's portfolio, completely fueled by that $1,400 monthly gap, has impressively ballooned to $80,000. Brian thinks he is building equity, but honestly, in the first few years of a 30-year mortgage, you aren't paying off a house. You're basically just renting money from the bank. If Brian tried to sell right then, he would lose almost all of his thin equity to a 5 to 6% realtor fee.
But hey, if we stopped right there, we'd be ignoring the biggest superpower of buying real estate. Brian is holding one enormous weapon that Rachel's sensible index fund simply does not have: leverage. Brian is controlling a $415,000 asset with just a $41,500 down payment. When the house appreciates, he gets the gains on the entire value of the home. Literally, the bank's money is actively working to make him richer.
Plus, Brian has a second massive advantage running in the background. He has a frozen fixed payment that never changes. It costs the exact same in year 5 as it did on day 1. Rachel's rent, meanwhile, silently creeps up about 4% every single year, and that rising cost is exactly what allows the buyer to slowly claw his way back into this financial fight.
All right, jump back to year 10. Like we said, they've reached the exact same net worth, but look at the cost of admission. Brian is emotionally handcuffed to one zip code, dealing with lost weekends fixing gutters. But, he has deep roots. Rachel, she bought literal optionality. She owns a tiny slice of 500 companies instead of one aging roof. She has the absolute freedom to pack up and move across the country for a dream job on 30 days' notice. Fast forward to year 20, and boom, a monumental shift happens. Brian's mortgage completely ends. It's done. He now lives in that house only paying for taxes and general upkeep. Rachel, on the other hand, is still writing a massive rent check every single month, and thanks to inflation, that check is now approaching $3,000.
So, what is the grand total after 2 full decades? Ultimately, their net worth lands in the exact same $500,000 plus ballpark. Brian holds over $500,000 in home equity, and Rachel holds over $500,000 in a highly liquid portfolio. They arrived at the exact same destination, but the vehicle they took to get there was on a completely different planet.
Now here's the first major plot twist of this whole explainer. Everyone just assumes houses are these financial rocket ships. But historically, stocks return about 7% after inflation, while real estate only returns about 1% after inflation. This means that if we use the honest historical math, Rachel the renter actually pulls ahead of Brian over the long haul.
But wait, here comes the behavioral plot twist. While Rachel easily wins on a clean, perfect spreadsheet, out in the real world, the median renter simply does not invest their savings. Let's be real, that $1,400 gap usually goes to nice dinners, nicer clothes, maybe a better car. And that is what makes Brian's mortgage incredibly powerful. It acts as a brilliant, strict, forced savings plan at gunpoint. It builds wealth whether he actually feels like saving that month or not.
So what should you actually take away from all this? Buying is clearly the winner for you if you plan to stay put for 7 years or more. If local rents in your city are just sky high compared to home prices, or, and this is absolutely crucial, if you know deep down that you will just spend your extra cash instead of diligently investing it. On the flip side, renting absolutely wins if you are a highly disciplined investor who will actually buy those index funds every month. It also wins if you plan to move within a few years, or if you live in a notoriously expensive market, think San Francisco or New York, where the unrecoverable costs of buying are so insane that the math never even crosses that break-even line.
The real trap here for both Brian and Rachel was making the single biggest financial decision of their entire lives based on a catchy slogan. Brian listened to Uncle Dave, Rachel listened to a viral video. Neither of them actually sat down to do the simple arithmetic for their specific life, their specific city, and their own behavioral habits.
Because here's the truth. There is no universal winner in the renting versus buying debate, and that is exactly the point. So the next time someone confidently tells you that renting is just throwing money away or that buying a house is the only smart move, stop them. Look them in the eye and ask one very quiet, very important question. Did you include everything? Because as you now know, the real math tells a very different story. So, which path will your math take you down?